here we are on the 17th of July for our weekly chat about what's happening in politics, in the country, sometimes in the world, answer people's questions about what's happening in the Dáil and lots of other stuff. Thanks everyone who joins, who's going to join on all the different platforms we're going out on. And please like, share, comment, ask your question. I'll do my very, very best to answer the question. This week, today, is the last day of the Dáil until the 17th of September. That's scandalous. It's scandalous, particularly in the context, I raised this during the week, of the fact that there's at least 260 children who have no offer of school places come September. Children with additional needs, after all the promises from the government, still no school places. That's the tip of the iceberg, because there's 3,000 with offers, but many of those have offers to school places where the classrooms do not exist yet and aren't going to exist until October, November. Pretty bad stuff altogether. So we were saying this week that the Dáil should not be going on its summer recess while this situation isn't sorted, while we still haven't passed a decent or any occupied territories bill. But anyway, the government has the majority, and here we unfortunately are. What I was going to try and focus on today is the very exciting news of Catherine Connolly running for president and the grassroots movement that is really growing around Catherine, and also in relation to the deepening ongoing housing crisis and the one aspect of that, which is the tenant-in-situ scheme, and then answer people's question. So Era Matters says, what are you doing about the 16,000 homeless people? So we'll start there. One thing that we're doing is fighting hard to say that the tenant-in-situ scheme must be properly funded and stay in place. This is one of the very, very few decent things that the government did over the past few years, under pressure from us and all the housing protesters, to introduce a scheme to say that if you were at risk of homelessness, if the house was being sold and you were going to be evicted into homelessness, then the councils would be funded to buy the house. You get turned into a council tenant. The landlord gets to sell their property as they want to sell it at market price, and the state gets the benefit of expanding its public housing stock. It is a win-win-win situation. The government implemented that a few years back and now are starving the councils of money. So now, in the middle of the year, Dublin City Council has run out of funds. No more properties will be bought under the tenant-in-situ scheme. Fingal County Council has now run out of funds. Carlow County Council has run out of funds. And we looked at the figures there the other day for South Dublin County Council. They're just about to run out of funds, and there's over 700 expressions of interest that basically won't be bought. This is going to create a tidal wave of extra homelessness, as the councils don't have the funds from central government to buy these properties to prevent people going into homelessness. Hi Mick, my studio is just a little corner of my office, not quite a studio. So that was, I raised that during the week in the Dáil. Like, it's crazy. I mean, all the things that the government is doing are going to make the crisis worse. You'll have seen they're changing the rules around the rent pressure zones to allow all rents to reset to market rates. In other words, have a big hike every few years. Rents are going to accelerate through the roof, all supposedly in an effort. We're going to increase rents because in the long run that'll lower rents. You see, because it'll attract private investment. It's crazy. They're going to lower the standards of houses. They're going to shrink the sizes, so you can now have a studio, which is no more than the size of 3 parking spaces. You aren't going to pay any less for that, in reality, but the institutional landlord, which it'll be in most cases, is going to get more money because they'll be able to fit in more studios charging the same price into the same area. And like the theoretical justification of all this by the government is, that'll all attract in more investment, and if they make more profits, they're already making big profits, to be clear, then they'll invest and the housing crisis will be solved. There's no evidence of that. This is basically the policy they've been pursuing for more than 10 years. Instead, the answer is to ban no-fault evictions, is to have rent controls that bring rents down to affordable levels, and crucially, a state construction company to build significant numbers of public housing. That's the answer. It's not rocket science. It doesn't come, it's not implemented because the government is not looking at this problem from the perspective of all those affected by the housing crisis, the 16,000 homeless, including almost 5,000 children homeless now, the 500,000 young people who are living at home, all the people who are forced to emigrate, the people who are paying extraordinary rent and can't afford it, the people trying desperately to save up for a new property and they keep going out of their reach. The government's looking at this from the perspective of their friends, the big landlords, big corporate, private developers. And that's fundamentally the problem, and it's why we need a fundamentally different solution. Frank says, I hear you're a racist now, Paul. I am not a racist, Frank. I don't know if you'll be happy or disappointed to find out that I'm not a racist. Thanks, Cryptic Soundwave. The other thing I just talk about for a bit is Catherine Connolly. You'll have heard, presumably, Catherine launched her campaign formally yesterday. We had a meeting of the People Before Profit Steering Committee last Friday and agreed enthusiastically to endorse her, to campaign for her. That's going to go for ratification to a meeting of our delegates of our branches in August. And we're very confident that that will be ratified. Our members are very enthusiastic. I think Catherine has a real chance at the presidency. I think this is about what sort of Ireland we want to live in. Do we want to hand the presidency back over to Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, those responsible for this huge inequality in our society, those responsible for the housing crisis, those pushing an agenda of militarisation, of scrapping neutrality? Or do we want to have a society based on what Catherine talks about, the common good, where people's needs come before profit, where, from our perspective, we need to have socialist policies based on a state construction company, stop the profiteering, price controls, deal with the cost of living crisis, take the key sectors of the economy out of private for-profit control into public ownership run for the common good, where we need to reject the drive of militarisation from NATO, the same forces who are behind, supporting, enabling the genocide in Gaza. We need to defend the triple lock, defend our neutrality. I think they are some of the questions that are going to be here. I mean, people like to say, establishment figures, always, presidency's got nothing to do with politics. It's an election. It's about politics. It's going to be a political election. At the moment, you have two candidates in the field, Mairead McGuinness, Fine Gael candidate, who is absolutely connected to the European People's Party, right-wing force in Europe, who voted to allow migrants to drown in the Mediterranean, who has the endorsement of Martin Weber, the leader of the EPP, supporting the genocide in Gaza. She's a landlord herself. She represents the landlords. Her versus Catherine Connolly, who's a long record of speaking up for ordinary people, speaking up for workers, campaigning for women's rights, and has strong left politics. So we're very enthusiastic about Catherine's campaign. We think it can be a step. The left comes together behind Catherine Connolly, and so far ourselves and the Social Democrats and lots of the independents have done so. Hopefully others will come on board. We think it can be a step towards presenting a united challenge in the general election. I also think there's every chance that some right-wing chancer, the likes of Declan Ganley, Peter Casey, some rich individual who wants people to direct their anger not at other rich individuals, not at those who profit from the housing crisis, but at those who suffer from it, vulnerable people at the bottom of our society, be it refugees, people of colour, LGBTQ people. Someone who tries to whip up that hatred and division is reasonably likely to enter the race. And then I think you'd have a clear divide between a Fine Gaeler who's saying everything's fine, we're making loads of money, everything's great, ignoring the reality of people's problems and pushing an agenda of militarisation. someone from the right who is engaging with the fact that people do have problems, but then pointing in the wrong direction, and then Catherine saying, yes, there's very fundamental problems in our society. Those fundamental problems are unnecessary. They're a product of how we're organising our society for the profit of those at the top, and we should direct our anger against those and putting forward a positive vision of change. I would really encourage people to get involved in her campaign. I think it is a grassroots campaign. Thousands of people, if not tens of thousands of people, will volunteer for Catherine, will get involved in knocking on doors and putting up posters and giving out leaflets, in talking to people and spreading the message on social media. She won't have the big money of Fine Gael and potentially Fianna Fáil if Fine Gael run a candidate, but what she can have is people power on the ground, like we've seen in the past in terms of water charges, in terms of repeal and Together for Yes. So if you get a chance, go onto her website. I'm fairly certain it's Catherine Connolly for President. Yes, it is Catherine Connolly for President.ie, and you can sign up to volunteer there. Let me look through some of the questions. What do you think Sinn Féin will do in terms of presidential nomination? I don't know. I think they're genuinely considering it. I respect they have their own process that's going to take some time. I hope that they'll come and back Catherine Connolly, but ultimately that's obviously a decision for them, for their structures. So we will see. Leo says I should reply to questions. Yes, I'm going to try to do that now. Is the banning of greyhound racing and coursing and fox hunting high on the government agenda? No, it is not on the government agenda at all. Unfortunately, the government is opposed to those things. We're pushing all of those things. We have bills for all of those things. But the government, unfortunately, is completely opposed to banning all of those things. It's pretty horrendous. What are your thoughts on Catherine's visit to Syria during the Assad regime? I've looked into this. I've spoken to Catherine about it. I don't think there's any problem here. Am, of course, completely an opponent of the Assad dictatorship, the brutality it inflicted on its own people. You can go and check the record on that, because sometimes people like to say, oh, you're a sadist or whatever. Like, not at all. But I think Catherine is too. I mean, I went and checked Catherine's speeches in the Dáil, and she was very clear on saying Assad is guilty of war crimes, opposing Assad. And she went on a fact-finding mission to Syria to visit Palestinian refugees in a refugee camp. You know, I don't see... I think it's just a slander that's been thrown at her, like Jeremy Corbyn being an anti-Semite or whatever. They've decided this is the attack line. You're going to hear a lot about it, but there's really not much substance to it if you go digging into it. Are we saying that you can't go to a country which has a horrible regime? You can't go to the US now. Trump's the US. I've been to Egypt. It's a horrible authoritarian dictatorship. I've been to Kazakhstan. It's a horrible authoritarian dictatorship. You know, I've been to all these countries. Doesn't mean I'm soft on these dictators or an agent of them or whatever. So, yeah, I don't... But I know what they're trying to do, but I don't think there's much substance to it. So I urge people, you know, who understandably might have, look, God, I don't want anything to do with the Assad regime. You're correct. Then go and look into it rather than just accepting, because I see it being thrown around the place and I just don't see much substance. Will you raise the exploitation of the international protection system being weaponized for profits? Yes, we have done previously and we will continue to do so. Unsub asks, anything positive happen in your day? I had a nice coffee with Catherine and chatted about her campaign. That was nice. That was something positive. I genuinely feel quite optimistic that this can be a moment when a lot of people turn on to politics and get engaged because they don't like the direction the country is going in, and they can be inspired and given a bit of hope by what Catherine offers. I just want a chance as a young man. I'm still living with the mother at 29. I definitely hear you. More emphasis on political education in secondary schools. Yeah, I guess so. I guess just the main thing is I don't think we can expect the schools to do it. You know what I mean? I think we need to go out and build people's movements and engage young people, give them hope there can be a radical alternative. Society does not have to be organised for profit as it currently is. It can be based on human needs. What are your plans on the youth if you're voted in? My plans on the youth. Well, one thing, because it's in the news actually, is in Britain, I'm surprised, but they're apparently lowering the voting age to 16. We called for that in the last election, or pushing for that. Another thing we're pushing for is for an end. We have a bill to end the so-called sub-minimum wage rates, where young people, if you're under 20, you can legally be paid less than minimum wage. I think a lot of people don't know that. Like, it's mad. There's tens of thousands of people in Ireland legally paid less than the minimum wage. It's super exploitation. They're doing the same job as the person beside them, but just because they're younger. What about the kids with autism and no school or place or school to go to? Yes, definitely. That's I was speaking about that just earlier, and I raised that in the Dáil on Wednesday. I think it's scandalous that the Dáil is breaking when there's at least 260 kids with no place to go to. We're going to be continuing to campaigning on it over the course of the summer, add up all the pressure that we can. Jim says nobody in the Dáil opposing the Compulsory Acquisition Act. I don't know exactly what act you're talking about. If you get the full title, throw it in there and I'll have a look. I'm sorry, now I'm going to scroll back to the bottom. PP says you talk the talk, but will you walk the walk? I think so. You'll have to look at my record as to whether I've walked the walk. I think I have. On a range of issues. Water charges is the one that's most prominent for people, but on housing as well, I'd say, in terms of Palestine. There you go, Unsub answers the question. Thank you, Unsub. How can we stop Fine Gael from winning the election? By not allowing people to be divided, by not allowing the kind of poison of the far right, which directs people's anger not at Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, but at poor migrants, not allowing those ideas to take hold. I think they did a big job for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, particularly in the last local elections. And I think by mobilising people, I think to the extent that the left is focused just on elections, it doesn't work in terms of changing society or even in terms of elections. You need to mobilise people. You need to give people a sense of their own power. Bishop says, was that when you were called the Communist Party of Ireland? I don't think I was christened the Communist Party of Ireland. I don't think anyone ever called me the Communist Party of Ireland. And I was never a member of the Communist Party of Ireland, although I'm happy to work with the Communist Party of Ireland in many different campaigns. A collective left, including Sinn Féin, manifesto is the only way to get Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael out. I think certainly a united left challenge is a part of it. For us, a key part of that is saying that we should rule out coalition with Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. People shouldn't be voting for the left and then ending up them putting Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael back into power. Yeah, like that's clear. And then we say for this government to actually make a difference, you need to have, a socialist approach. You need to be willing to take on the corporate landlords, big businesses, etc. Bishop asked me why did I read that message and not about the Catholics? Because I didn't see the message about the Catholics. Throw in your question about the Catholics. You're doing a lot of things. No chance Ireland has been destroyed by all parties. Paul, can you say a good thing the government is doing? The recognition of a Palestinian state was a good thing that the government did. They did it under significant pressure from below to try and do something. And they did it because, it cost them less. I don't mean in money terms, but I mean in terms of, pissing off the Americans. So it was something. But why did the collective left let the general election slip through your fingers? Is it easier to shout from the ditch? I mean, I did everything I could to not let it slip through my fingers. I think mistakes were made by other parties, but I won't really get into it here. But Bill, hopefully you're involved in a party and you're doing your best. The left isn't something over there that you just get to say, oh, these are all shit. If you want to change things, you should get involved and give your own ideas. And yep, thanks, Leo. All parties still agree with Brussels. We definitely don't agree with Brussels. Or are we talking to Sinn Féin to support Connolly? I mean, I think she's talking to them, and I've been in meetings with Mary Lou about it, and Mary Lou obviously knows about Catherine Connolly. I think they're considering that as an option, but I also want to give them space to have their discussions. Do I not wear a suit because I'm a socialist? No, I'd say some socialists wear suits. Joe Higgins back in the day used to wear a suit. Yeah, I don't know. I don't find a suit comfortable. It's not some big political statement or anything. Yeah. Thoughts on Peter Casey calling me a far left lunatic? I welcome Peter Casey's description. Yes, Jody, it is worthwhile emailing. Yep. When will we have our next election? Well, we'll have I missed a question on the farmers' cap. Are you taking any actions on it? We don't have anything currently planned, but we would definitely be open to working with groups like Talamh Bio in Ireland about the latest cap proposals, and we'll be raising the Dáil when the Dáil is back, and happy to participate in any things over the summer. Agree with you about Catherine Connolly. Yes, Catherine Connolly's worth supporting. Someone, when we have our next election, well, the next presidential election will be soon, probably October or November. Next general election, we don't know. I mean, it could go as far as the end of 2029, right? So we can't wait for it. We'd organise now on housing, on the cost of living crisis, on Palestine, in defence of neutrality, for children with additional needs. That can't wait, you know, and I think that will be a big mistake for people to think, oh, we wait till the next election. Hi, Leo. No, I don't. Because I think we drew a line in the sand, and that's been it so far. So yeah, sorry, I have a lot of questions from. I've only been looking at the TikTok questions. My apologies to those people on Instagram and Facebook. I'll do my best to answer some questions now. Hey, Mike. All right, man, measure your studio. Capitalism is destroying the best aspects of Ireland the same way it did in the States. Robin on Facebook says, yes, I agree. Thanks, Sukaina. What do I think of Mairead McGuinness? I'm not a fan. How to deal with the right bullies. Stand up to them. Don't be intimidated by them. I see some looper was claiming that I'm objecting to an iPass centre near my house. It's like bizarre. They did a video. They went outside the house and everything and did a video. It's nothing. There's not. They're just inventing an iPass centre, you know, to be mad about. It's not an iPass centre. There's no proposal for being an iPass centre. We're not opposing it being an iPass centre. It's bizarre, you know. So you just need to expose these people as the liars that they are, and then focus your attention on the government, those responsible for the problems people face in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Yeah, there's a question, Robert. What's going on with 1 and 1A Kingswood Drive? That's the place that some far-right looper is trying to say is an iPass centre. It's not planned to be an iPass centre. So these are houses quite close to where I live that we've been campaigning with residents for quite a while. It was derelict for ages and ages and ages, years and years. Crazy. You know, potentially a perfectly good house where people could be living in, just left derelict. We eventually got it on the derelict sites register, and then that seemed to provoke the old owner who left it derelict and empty to go and sell it. Now there's a new owner, great, everyone's happy, and now there's very strange planning permission put in what seems like something like 9 bedrooms. It seems, to be honest, to be a mistake in the planning application, but still there are strange things in terms of proposals for like the layout they have. There's like 16 places at 2 different dining tables, this kind of thing. So we've put it in observation about it, and other residents have done. I suspect the council will go back looking for more information, because look, this should be used as accommodation for people. This should be a house and a granny flat as it currently is. You know, we're against obviously turning it into some sort of, you know, overcrowded slum conditions. I think everyone would be against that. So we'll see. If you go onto the just Google South Dublin County Council planning applications, you'll be able to go and see the plans and then see the observations. I'm not sure. I think our observation is online, but anyway, you'll be able to check it out there. Live down the road, seeing the video. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the video is mad. I mean, I just think it's mad. Like, you know, obviously someone got the letter that we sent out and decided that this is something to do with iPass, like, and decided to get mad about it. Like, it's nothing to do with iPass. It's bizarre. But yeah. How can I join the party? From Cork, pvp.ie/join. I'm going to have to go shortly because I have to run something. Do you think anyone would look at how SIPO works? Yeah. I know. I've been meaning to write a bill on it, to be honest, on SIPO, because it's a bit of a disaster. It doesn't do much, effectively nothing, you know. in terms of stopping corruption amongst politicians. Doesn't do its job. Husky Darren says, and the loony left think they're creating a lovely Ireland. Not true. Well, Husky Darren, the loony left are not in charge. It is the traditional right of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that are in charge and that have been in charge since the foundation of the state. So if there's things that you don't like about this country, and you'd be right, it's very hard to blame the loony left for them. How do we know your party can be trusted? You can check our record. And I think we generally do what we say. You might not like what we do and say, but we do it. We're not like other parties that say one thing and do another. I didn't get any dodgy photos from McGregor at the weekend. Right, let me just look at the final messages. Saviour 88833 says that this man went to prison for all of us not to pay water charges. I appreciate that, Saviour. I didn't quite go to prison now, in fairness. But they certainly tried to send me to prison. They charged us all, with a whole number of us, with false imprisonment, and then we had like an 8-week or 9-week trial, and then we had a jury trial, thankfully, and so we were all found unanimously not guilty. But thanks a lot. Right. I'm afraid I have got to run. Don't worry, I will not have radio silence over the summer. I'll try and do these actually quite regularly. So, because like stuff will still be happening, you know what I mean? Just because the door's not on, I'll still be working, and we'll still be campaigning, and things will be happening, both bad and good. Hopefully the Catherine Connolly campaign will really get going. So maybe I just finish with the final plug for that. If you can, go on to catherineconnollyforpresident.ie, sign up to volunteer for the campaign. If you can, give a little donation, even €1, €5, €10, €20, €50, whatever you can give, because this is a people-powered campaign without the big resources of the Fine Gael candidature and possibly Fianna Fáil candidature. Yeah, where do I keep my toaster? On the kitchen counter beside the fridge. Have a good day. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.